Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go discussion video. Okay, so over the weekend, I was actually away on a trip over at Washington, D.C. I was visiting a bunch of friends and family. And of course, during my trip, Niantic made the announcement regarding Gigantamax Pokemon. They released all the details for this upcoming new feature. And I think there was a lot of mixed reactions, more leaning towards the negative when it came to the Pokemon Go community. There was a lot of players that were feeling very underwhelmed by this long-awaited feature, and I think for the most part, I agree with a lot of those negative sentiments. I do think that for a lot of things that Niantic could have done with Gigantamax Pokemon, they decided to go away where they're going to have a lot of missed opportunities. And I really wanted to talk about that here. I basically rushed home from the airport to actually record a video about this topic because I really could not wait. I really had a lot of thoughts regarding this announcement, and I do think it's worth a discussion. So what exactly did Niantic announce? Well, they stated that in the upcoming days, there's going to be a new thing with Max Battles, and it's going to involve Gigantamax Pokemon. Now, if you know anything about Gigantamax Pokemon from the mainstream games, these are essentially a super-powered version of Dynamax Pokemon that are only available for very specific Pokemon, and for the most part, they're all really cool. They come with some really powerful attacks, they have increased stats that are definitely much more higher than regular Dynamax Pokemon, and to a degree, it's something that definitely is the penultimate version of every single Dynamax Pokemon. Certain Pokemon like Charizard, for example, like if you look at a regular Dynamax Charizard compared to a Gigantamax Charizard, just visually you could tell there is definitely a difference. And I think for Gigantamax Pokemon, there was a lot of potential here for them to do something really cool with Max Battles, to integrate it into other forms of gameplay within Pokemon Go, like with raids and PvP, but they decided not to go that way. Basically, how they're handling Gigantamax Pokemon is that it's going to be the endgame content of Max Battles, and that's pretty much it. They're not going to integrate Gigantamax Pokemon in anything else in Pokemon Go. It's essentially going to continue on with this isolated progression. And I think because of that, a lot of players are feeling very disappointed, they're feeling very underwhelmed, and it's mainly because when it comes to Max Battles, it just feels like a lot of players simply do not care. And this is something that I did voice in previous videos. I talked about how with the Max Battle system, the only way they're going to get players on board is if there's any kind of integration with Max Pokemon that you could bring to other forms of gameplay. Like if you could use Dynamax Pokemon in raid battles in some way, I think a lot more players would actually care about it. But treating it as an isolated form of progression, that's only going to draw the attention of players for a very short duration. And I think with Gigantamax Pokemon, yes, there's certainly going to be a lot more Dynamax battles that players are going to do. I'm sure that for the initial buzz of it, people are going to care about it. But over time, players are just going to completely forget about Gigantamax Pokemon and Dynamax Battles because there's really no purpose to you getting Gigantamax Pokemon right now. You can't use them for raid battles, you can't use them for PvP, and I think because of that, players are feeling like this feature is just another thing that Niantic developed that players are just going to completely ignore over time. Now, considering that this is a new form of progression that is completely isolated, for some players, they are actually enjoying the Max Battle system, and I'm actually one of those players. I actually think it's a fun form of gameplay that is very fresh and very new, and Niantic actually did a lot of really great design decisions with this new feature. The only problem that I have with it is that I feel like a lot of the time and effort that I invest into Dynamax Battles is really for just the sake of doing Dynamax Battles, if you know what I mean. Like, there's no point in doing these battles. Like, there's no point in collecting Dynamax Pokemon. Sure, you could get yourself a Shundo of a Pokemon that could Dynamax, and that is definitely going to add a lot of value to that Pokemon, but overall, I just feel like this is a form of gameplay that just isn't for everyone, and it's not something that's going to be universally appealing. And I think Niantic could have addressed that very easily with Gigantamax Pokemon by actually having any kind of implication for doing these Gigantamax battles for other forms of gameplay in Pokemon Go. I think it's mind-blowing how much of a missed opportunity this is and how Niantic missed it, that you cannot use Dynamax Pokemon or Gigantamax Pokemon in other forms of gameplay. Like with raid battles, I think there could have been a lot of cool and unique things that they could have done where you could use a Gigantamax Pokemon in a raid battle and it would alter the battle in some way. I think this was done really well with Mega Evolutions, and they could have done something very similar, but instead of going down that route, it looks like with at least Gigantamax Pokemon, it's just going to be essentially an endgame version of what's already there, and I think that's very underwhelming. And then another gripe that a lot of players have been voicing is the player requirements for doing these Gigantamax battles. It would have made total sense if you needed 4 trainers, like a team of 4 trainers. I think that would have made a lot of sense. It's essentially a limited version of solo content. You do need to form a group in order to take it down, but they stated that you need 10 to 40 trainers to take these down, and I think everyone collectively were just scratching their heads. Like, why would they do this? They took something that was meant to be like really good solo content, something that any player could jump into. Like, if it's going to be a little bit more challenging, yes, you could get some help from other players. But I think having it as some sort of raiding content that requires a ton of players, that they need to be there in person, that is a huge oversight, and it just goes to show that Niantic is completely out of touch with how players play Pokemon Go right now. I really feel like their approach with this design decision is that they're trying to recapture how things were when they first released Legendary Raids. If you could recall back then, or if you just simply were not playing Pokemon Go back then, the way that Legendary Raids used to work is that you needed a team of at least 10 trainers, and that was the only feasible way to take these down. It was incredibly difficult content, mainly because players did not have the kind of collections that they have now, and on top of that, they were some very challenging content that required a lot of community effort, and I really feel like Niantic is trying to recapture that right now. The only problem is, when it comes to these Gigantamax Pokemon, there really is no incentive for you to do that, because back then, yeah, it was really cool that you could catch legendary Pokemon for the very first time. But now it's like, cool, you're getting a very unique version of Charizard. That's pretty much it. You can't use it in raids, you can't use it in PvP. Like, sure, you could use the non-Dynamax version of that Pokemon in raids, but overall, it just feels like this is a huge miss, and I feel like because Niantic has put so much emphasis on community-based outdoor play, that they completely missed the mark. They completely misunderstood what players are looking for when they play Pokemon Go, and I think this is a huge problem because it's a really bad sign for how Pokemon Go could go down in the future. I mean, just comparatively speaking, recently we saw the introduction of the shiny Galarian legendary birds, and that got a lot of players to go out and about using their daily adventure incense, doing a lot of outdoor-based play, exploring new areas, and I feel like that was a great way that they encouraged players to go out and explore, and I feel like they're just not understanding what players want. They do not really care for this sort of community-based play like they used to. Yes, there's still a lot of community-based play, don't get me wrong. There's still players out there who are utilizing party play to take down raids a lot faster. There's players who are coordinating to get raids done. That's still going on, but it's not to the degree that it used to be when raids were first introduced. And I think Niantic needs to understand that when it comes to this in-person content, players want to do it in a way where they're going at their own pace. They do not want to go through all the hoops and bells and whistles that they used to, where they have to coordinate with so many trainers, trying to get them at certain locations at a certain time, and if they miss out on a raid, then they need to meet up at the next raid and all that stuff. It's just incredibly complicated, and the game has evolved away from that, and that's something that I'm really afraid that Niantic just does not understand. And because of that, I do feel like this is not going to be great Pokemon Go content, and it's definitely going to fall by the wayside. Now, I think that there is hope. I think there is a way that Niantic could redeem this. The simple thing that they could do is have it so that you could use Gigantamax Pokemon in some way when it comes to other forms of gameplay. I like the idea of them not even being available for raid battles, but if you Gigantamax a Pokemon, like you Dynamax that Pokemon, you could get some sort of global bonus when you use it. Like, for example, you could get additional candies or additional Stardust, or you deal just a little bit more damage of the type of that Gigantamax Pokemon in a raid battle. I really do not know what they could do, but but they could get creative with it, and I think a lot more players would be receptive to this new feature. So yeah, I really do think we're in a bit of a crossroads. It's quite unfortunate that I have to make another negative video, but just gauging the temperature of the Pokemon Go community, yeah, there's a lot of frustrations and there's a lot of disappointment, and I'm sure you're going to see it in the comments section down below. And there's of course going to be detractors, there's going to be people who are going to say that this is actually really great content, and to that I totally agree with them as well, because yeah, it's actually really good content. It's just, it doesn't have any implications for everything else in Pokemon Go, and I think because of that, players are not necessarily going to care about it. And I think that's the message that I want to lay out. This is something that has a lot of potential. This is something that can be really great for Pokemon Go and produce a lot of longevity. But because Niantic is approaching it in a way that is not necessarily going to resonate with players, I feel like because of that, this is going to be a huge missed opportunity. And I really hope Niantic course corrects, because I would like to see Dynamax Battles and Gigantamax Pokemon be something really special and not its own isolated thing. But in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below in the comments. Do you totally agree with me? Do you feel like all of this is just content that's going to fall by the wayside? Or do you disagree with me and you feel like this is something really cool and it's something more players should get behind? Make sure you share all those thoughts in the comment section down below so we could have a great discussion. And yeah, with that said, that's going to be it for this video. I am Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all in the next one.